Do you feel like that 10% funding gap for the Key Bridge gets done before Christmas?
That's the plan right now. We want it either as a standalone appropriation or a supplemental to the ongoing appropriation. So we've got 6 or 7 weeks to be able to work that out. Fortunately, now that we've gotten past the elections, we've got a willingness on behalf of some members of the Republican Party who were not on board before to find a way to join in. The issue here is that there are going to be natural disasters in everybody's district, whether it's a flood or hurricane or a tornado or a bridge collapse. And so the bipartisan thing to do is what we've done in the past in a bipartisan way, and that's to make sure that we work together to restore the funding. A lot of that funding is there. Once it gets drawn out, it's got to be reappropriated. So we want to do both things at the same time, so there is an instant replenishment.
Just yesterday, Congressman Harris expressed doubt, actually, that full 10% funding would be passed, but you still feel confident it will get done?
Yeah, I don't operate on doubt. I operate on will do and can do. And that's the belief that I'm going into this. I mean, we've got a great team here in Maryland working together. We've got members of the congressional delegation who are on the Appropriations Committee. So we've got every reason to believe that this will be our best effort to go forward and the best team to do it. We want to be able to wrap this up and not have it carry over into a new Congress.
My last question, on Wednesday, Mayor Scott expressed, he said specifically that federal funding projects that could just, quote, go away included the Red Line, the Frederick Douglass Tunnel, the Howard Street Tunnel, the Key Bridge funding. Do you agree with Mayor Scott's assessment?
Yeah, the mayor is right on in terms of his belief that in an instant these things can go away. You know, if we're in a situation now where we don't know what the new administration wants to do, we don't know what their priorities are, we know what ours are. And this is an administration previously that was never that kind to Baltimore. So if there is an effort to be punitive by doing away with funding for the Red Line, doing away with funding for the tunnels, both tunnels that we need so desperately, or anything else, that could in fact happen. We're going to not think that way. We're going to work to find a way to keep it from happening. I'm prepared to meet with this president, with the appropriators on the Hill, on the Republican side, to make our case. We think we've got a good case, but we don't know what we're dealing with. This is going to be an interesting few weeks as we lead up to the swearing in.
Anything I didn't ask about there that you want to mention?
No, I can't think of anything on that except that there is a strong willingness now to get past this election and to try to figure out how do you win. I mean, this election reminds me of 1968 when Hubert Humphrey lost overwhelmingly, 1972 when Richard Nixon cleaned the Democratic clocks, and 1980 when Ronald Reagan came in. Each time there was a sense of despair and hopelessness among people and in communities. And I don't buy into that. I think what you do when you get knocked down is you get back up. You figure out a new way to win, because at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that what you wanted and what you set out to get is something that you fight like hell for.
Congressman, I just want to ask you, what's the significance of today's event? We had this event last year.
We did. It's an annual event. I consider it an honor to be able to update the larger religious community that are Christians, Jews, and Muslims on what I'm doing, what I have done, but more importantly, what's getting ready to come about in our congressional district. Last year, ironically, we did this a few days after the October 7th attacks by Hamas. And so that kind of dictated the conversation after the updates that I gave. This year, obviously, it's the election. But it's good to have, in this instance, faith leaders to be able to talk about their work, to understand my work, and to figure out how do we go forward, because at the end of the day, they're ministering to people all day long on the ground who are looking for help, who are looking for guidance, who are looking for support. So it's very important for me.
Congressman, back in 2006, you ran for U.S. Senate. Here in 2024, some 18 years later, Maryland has its first black U.S. Senator. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it doesn't seem like it's been 18 years, but I guess it has. And I'm so happy for Angela. The fact that she was up against some very strong headwinds, $60 million working against her in the primary, and God knows how much money here in the general election. So the fact that she was able to be successful, I think is something that we all ought to feel good about. It was a hard-fought election. We've got a new senator going forward, and she's got for lack of a better way of describing it, a full agenda of those things that Marylanders care about, want to see done, and want to see passed. So I'm looking forward to having her as a partner in the United States Congress, as well as Congressman Olszewski, as well as Congresswoman Eldridge, and I think April Delaney. Today we should know how that race ends up.
One quick question, one last question. Any message of hope to the 7th Congressional District? There's a lot of despair on people's faces. They don't know what to think. They're calling on God. They're calling on all kinds of, any thoughts to the people?
Yeah, like we've been there and done this before. It was terrible in 1968. It was my first campaign that I worked on. I was a kid, 20 years old. I sat on the curb that night in West Baltimore and cried when I realized that Hubert Humphrey, who had all my hopes and aspirations and a very good message of inclusion, had lost. I couldn't believe it. That's how I ran into Perrin Mitchell, who was my predecessor here in this job. 1972, I don't want to go through the litany again, but that was the Richard Nixon era, and then Ronald Reagan. So it's not the sort of outcome that people wanted, but it does not dictate the future. It just says we get up, we fight back, we find a way to win, and we keep moving forward. Because there are a lot of people who are just getting into this process, who are in their 20s, who are looking at this, but more importantly, looking at us to see how we deal with it.
Thank you, Congressman. Keep watching. Be More News.
Thanks for the time. See you next time.